You're listening to the 40 Thrive Podcast, the show created for women 40 and beyond, ready to shake things up. And now, your host, Jackie McDougall.
Welcome back to another episode of the 40 Thrive Podcast. If you're here for the first time, well, hello there. Welcome. I'm really excited that you're here. So now that we are fully into summer, I want to spend a little bit of time talking about our bodies. So over in the 40 Thrive private Facebook group, we're talking about night sweats, vertigo, and all of the sexy things that start to happen to us over 40, 50, and 60. But I don't want to just commiserate about how our bodies change. I really don't know how helpful that is after the first 5 minutes. I want to share ideas and solutions and maybe give you something to think about that hadn't occurred to you. That's why this summer I've got episodes that are meant to help you not only feel less alone when it comes to aging, but also help you appreciate your body and find what you need to feel and look your best. That starts with today's episode. I'm talking with Alicia Schoroth, owner of herpowerlifestyle.com, where she provides weight loss and fitness programs with a focus on hormone balance. But before we get into my conversation with Alicia, this episode of the 40 Thrive Podcast is brought to you by Coconut. If you're like countless other women over 40, sex can get uncomfortable, to say the least. Coconut is committed to helping couples lead healthier, happier lives by offering 100% safe and organic personal care products. They're all about quality and comfort, and I am obsessed with their product. Head on over to coconut.com and save 10% off your order when you use promo code THRIVE. With Coconut, details matter. And trust me, you'll thank me later. Okay, so for the second week in a row on the 40 Thrive Podcast, we're headed up north to Canada, the Toronto area to be exact. Here's my chat with certified health and nutrition coach and hormone specialist, Alicia Schoroth. Alicia, welcome to the 40 Thrive Podcast.
Thank you for having me.
I am so happy you're here. When I hear words like aging in reverse and understanding our hormones, I'm like, yes, tell me more, tell me more. So I'm excited to get into all of that. But before we do, sometimes when I envision people who are in the fitness industry, I think about them as children and that they were probably doing pull-ups in the playground and beating up boys. But that was not the case for you. Can you give us a little background?
Yeah, not even close. When I was around 5 years old, I developed quite a weight problem. And I don't mean just a little bit overweight, like quite overweight. My mother would have to take me shopping in the boys section, to be completely honest, through much of my early school years. And it was bizarre because it wasn't a result of, unhealthy eating in our household. I grew up in a very healthy household, with athletes. And we don't really know what it was. And, there's that whole mentality back then, she's just big boned or that type of thing. And my weight was a struggle my entire childhood. And, I would lose weight, on my own, once in a while and get those compliments. Oh, you've lost weight. You look so fantastic. So at an early age, then you start developing that whole, skinny equals good. And, I continued to battle with my weight on and off as I went through grade school, middle school. And then when I got into high school, I took it in a really bad way. I actually started losing weight to the point where I developed an eating disorder when I was around grade 10 because those compliments kept pouring in, when you lost weight, and I developed a very unhealthy relationship with food. Now, thankfully, I had great supportive parents who saw this problem, got medical help, and, they sort of straightened me out. And that was, a chapter that we hoped had closed. But it was still a struggle. And I found if I didn't keep on top of it, I would consistently gain the weight. And I always wanted to be that skinny girl like all of my friends. I've always had the bigger, more muscular legs back before having muscle was sort of now seen as a great healthy thing to have.
Right.
And it was a true struggle. I was never naturally athletic. Like I always competed in sports, sort of when your parents force you into dancing and soccer and figure skating and those types of things. But I was never the athlete. I wasn't the varsity athlete. I wasn't the athlete in high school. And as I got into university, what, happens as most do, you're away from home. There's not really a lot of monitoring of what you're eating. My weight would go up and down in university. And I basically resigned myself to the fact that I was going to be a heavy person. So, being fit was not something that, or slim was anything that came easy to me. It's something that I have battled with my entire life.
At what point in your life did you decide I can't do this up and down anymore?
Well, when I was 26 years old, my father passed away from complications from diabetes. And it was a real wake-up call, not just because seeing what an illness, I know diabetes is in some cases preventable. My father did have type 1, but I saw what chronic illness can do to a person's body, and it really scared me. And at that point in my life, I had a corporate job. I was working downtown on Bay Street, which is the equivalent to like New York's Wall Street. You know, going out for the after work drinks and eating a lot of like meeting food and desk food, and people would bring food in. And I felt horrible. And it was honestly a wake-up call. And not too long after that, I got my first gym membership, and I have never looked back.
Now, many of us, and I say us, will get that first gym membership and then maybe not go to the gym, or let it lapse and then maybe rejoin the gym. So at that point, when you joined the gym, what do you think it was that helped you just stick to it?
I loved the way I felt. I loved the way it made me feel. I found it energized me. It was just, I finally found something that I enjoyed. And I finally, for the first time in my life, realized, wow, I love being active. I love getting out and exercising, where I always had told myself in the head, oh, you're not the active person. You're not the athlete. And it was something that, when someone discovers a hobby, for example, and something they really truly enjoy, I think that's why it's stuck. But it also stuck because I found it a great stress release because of the type of industry I worked in. It was great to go and move after being stuck at a desk job all day. So for me, it was almost therapy.
Well, let's talk about this for a second, because you just said something that really struck a chord with me. Mm-hmm. You had decided who you were or who you were not. Mm-hmm. And would tell yourself that story over and over. And I think that is so relatable. I think we all do that. I hear myself at the gym sometimes like, oh, I'm not a runner. But, anybody who is able to get up and move their legs one at a time can actually be a runner. Maybe I'm not running marathons or winning races, but any of us we're all athletes. Mm-hmm. in our bodies. And I don't think that we necessarily appreciate. So do you feel like there were messages when you were young that convinced you that you were not an athlete, or that you were not someone who would be physically fit and who would appreciate nutrition?
Yes, exactly. It's the beliefs that we develop as children. And I find this more so with women, really stick and really scar us. And we just become convinced that this is who I am, this is what I'm destined to be. I hear it all the time from women, oh, I'm not a slim person. And I find with women, myself in particular, I always had this, oh no, not me attitude, when, the attitude we should have is, why not me?
Right.
So I was constantly told, being the fat girl, or she won't be a fast runner, or don't pick her for the team. And ironically, this is the one ironic thing. I actually was quite a fast runner, even despite my weight, because I've always had very strong legs. But these beliefs that stick with us, these labels that we attach to ourselves, they say the way that you speak to children. And I had very supportive parents, but it's the stuff you hear in the school ground from other kids. You're never expected to be the athlete. You're never asked to come try out for the team. Someone assumes that when you open your lunchbox, you're going to have Twinkies and donuts in there, even though my mom would send me with apples and, healthy food. It's just these beliefs stick with you. So it was overcoming that, which was a huge, huge part. Switching my mindset, not just for myself, but for anybody who is looking to improve their health and fitness, or anything in their life for that matter. They really have to think of what their self-limiting beliefs are and really try to dispel those.
I think that the mindset is the whole game.
Oh yeah, it really is.
That's why you see people who lose weight gain it back, because yes, you can make those choices to get in great shape or whatever it is for a short period of time. But if you're not working on the mindset and some of those beliefs that we have from wherever they stemmed from, then you're just going to go back to some of these old habits.
Exactly. And I think with a lot of weight loss problems, the problem is someone is just given something very strict and restrictive, or with a lot of guidelines, and they follow it. And the person that loses the weight, they think they've only done it because someone helped them. They don't think that they are capable of living that way, or, having that lifestyle on their own without the assistance. They haven't really learned. And I think because, again, they believe that they can't. I can't do this on my own. I'm not meant to be slim on my own. And I think that's why they do fall back into the old habits.
Right. I mean, it's a multi-billion-dollar industry, right?
It,
To get people to jump on board for something.
Yeah. And, I have women come to me now and I hear this all the time. I've tried everything. And the problem is people are trying to reinvent the wheel and it's the newest, greatest thing. And it's really not as hard as people think. It's mindset and a strategy, and that's it.
So when did you go from, okay, so now you're going to the gym, you're liking how you feel. At what point does it become your profession? How did that look?
I continued to be fit all the time while I was in banking, but it was sort of through my own experience and what I learned. So I'll just fast forward a little bit. I became the cardio queen. I would commute downtown with my husband. We worked in the same industry. So I was the girl that would get up at 4 a.m. to get my run in, to get dressed for the office, to go downtown. I thought I was eating healthy. I wasn't eating enough, nowhere near enough. We have this thing with women where terribly afraid of food. Food is the enemy. Water has calories. And we were trying to start a family. And we couldn't. We spent about $40,000 on fertility treatments. And we were just told it was unexplained fertility. And I went to my general practitioner and he realized that my thyroid was still completely off. So we realized I had low thyroid. I think a lot of that was probably a result of what I had done to my body, my immune system, my adrenals as a result of the yo-yo dieting, the eating disorder when I was younger. And I started really doing my own research in terms of this correlation of, things to do, to help with fertility levels. A lot of it was reducing stress. And as I started reading more, and one thing I just want to go back to really quickly, out of self-interest, in 2006, I decided to get my personal training certification. And this is while I was still deep in at the bank. And I started doing all this, research on, thyroid, because your thyroid is a hormone. Your body produces thyroid hormones. And the correlation between the body and the stress and, the food that we put into our bodies. And I put myself on a elimination diet. No processed foods, nothing bad, no soda pop, all just very good, wholesome, real foods, high nutrition. And within about 4 months, I got pregnant on my own.
Wow.
And one of the things, ironically, at the time I got pregnant, I was at that point in the best shape of my adult life. And I was told if I was trying to get pregnant, well, you really shouldn't run. So I started just walking. I had reduced my cardio. I was in the gym lifting. I started to see my body change. I felt great. And I got pregnant naturally. So when I had my son, because of the crazy hours I worked, I decided that my husband and I had a talk, and I decided that I was going to resign and stay home with my son. So, as I was starting, my son was getting a little bit older. I'm like, well, I need to do something. And I didn't want to go back to the industry that I was in. And I'd been doing a lot of research still in sports and fitness, and I'd been taking certifications and courses. I've lost track of how many certifications and courses I've done and how many hours I've spent, but I had this desire for knowledge. And I kind of started figuring it all out, and I saw what the problem was, and I saw women that I still worked with, friends of mine in the industry that were still suffering, and I decided, you know what? My next career, I'm going to help women figure it out with all what I've learned and the experience that I've, gone through. And it was like a calling to me. I love helping people, and I love the satisfaction of helping someone, have that light bulb go off.
Not only are you talking about nutrition, and I read some of your certifications already as far as nutrition and fitness and all of that, but tell me more about becoming a certified hormone specialist. What does that look like? And what did you learn specifically about women and women over 40 going through that certification?
Well, the reason why I went into, started diving deeper into the hormonal issue is when I, with my social media account, I have a decent amount of followers, and I know it's not about that, but I would have women message me saying, how is it that, you can do this at this age? Because I never hide my age. And I can't figure it out. And they would tell me their problems. I'm like, oh, that sounds hormonal. That sounds hormonal. That sounds exactly the way I was. So I really wanted to dive in deep. And that's why I took the certification, because I saw a need in the fitness industry for this. It's like women, and it's not just over 40, even over 35. It's a forgotten demographic. A lot of the fitness magazines, you look at the girls, the workouts, the pictures, even the eating plans in there are geared for a younger set that don't yet have these issues. So that's what really prompted me to really narrow down to this niche and really help these women where wasn't a lot of information out there. And where what was a really interesting turning point is when I decided to compete. Actually, my husband encouraged me to compete because he just said, I think it would be really good to show other women what is possible after the age of 40. Like, he gets the credit for that. But I don't know if you know anything about competing. A lot of times they're associated with a very unhealthy diet. It's very restrictive eating, and massive amounts of carbohydrates. And I would follow that. I had a great coach. Most people, when they go into competing, they hire a coach. And I would, eat the typical bodybuilder's diet. And I felt like, for lack of a better phrase, crap. I was bloated, lethargic. I didn't like the way I felt. So I said, you know what? I'm going to take the hormonal eating and apply it to my body in competing. And everything changed. It started reproving to me all of what they're saying about, hormonal eating and carb sensitivity and that type of thing. So, as I would have women reach out and you say, that's how I started developing these eating plans, all based on healing foods and, the hormonal protocol.
What does the hormonal protocol look like?
In a nutshell, it is no processed foods. It is no inflammatory foods. Dairy is highly inflammatory. It's okay for kids, but adults do not have the enzymes to break down dairy. So it goes beyond something like a lactose intolerance. It's actually inflammatory in the body. Glutens, a lot of grains are so highly processed and GMO'd that, again, they're inflammatory and women just can't process them. Going into things like when you're having meat products, animal products, a lot of beef that you buy, the average beef you buy in the grocery store is feedlot commercial beef. And they are fed a diet, usually high in soy. The grains have soy. And a lot of them have exposure to hormones and antibiotics. So when we're ingesting this food, we're taking in all of these hormones and antibiotics. And when your body is taking in non-natural or outside hormones, your body stops producing the hormones that it needs to stay in balance. A lot of women are afraid of fat. I know you can probably remember, I started to see the trend. I'm old enough that when everything started going sugar-free, fat-free, like I still don't encourage sugar, but when everything started going fat-free, obesity levels started to rise. And that's because a lot of the companies, when they were removing fat from items, they were replacing them with garbage and chemicals. And again, we're taking in all these chemicals. They come into our liver. They can cause estrogen dominance. They can strain our adrenals. It all gets caught in the liver. It makes it impossible to lose weight because if your liver is not functioning properly and flushing all these toxins out, you can't lose weight. You can't function at an optimal level. So one of the things that is really important about hormonal eating is a higher fat diet. And it's not keto. I don't push, hey, let's have bacon fat and cheese for breakfast. That is not heart healthy. I know a lot of people have success on the keto diet, but I'm talking healthy fats like your avocado, your nuts, your seeds. And there's, when I provide women my program, there's an entire list of the healing foods and why they're good. They all serve a purpose. So it's a higher fat, it's a lower carbohydrate eating. Most of us don't have the activity level or the tolerance to process the carbs of a traditional, what we say, American diet. It's too carb heavy. And it is moderate protein. And that is the other thing I noticed a pattern with women with eating. When they approach me to work with me, I tell them to give me their average day of eating. And it is nowhere close to the amount of protein that they should be having. As we age, we lose bone density, we lose muscle mass. First of all, muscle mass, the more lean muscle we have, the higher our metabolisms are going to be, the more effectively we're going to burn fat. And women are afraid of protein, so we're losing muscle. We're not going to have a healthy metabolism. And you want to continue to build that lean muscle and bone density. And I'm not saying become a bodybuilder, but you need it to function and stay functional in your daily life. So I have them up their protein. They should always be eating according to their height, weight, and age, making sure that, women are eating enough. If you chronically undereat, you're not going to lose weight. And again, it's keeping everything natural, higher healthy fats, lower on the carbohydrate scale, adequate protein. I'm saying about 30% of your daily caloric intake.
What kind of proteins do you recommend? I mean, you were talking about obviously the meat industry, so you don't want to just like run down to the local grocery store and buy a bunch of meat. So are you talking about no meat or responsible meat? How does that look for you?
More so responsible meat. So first of all, if we're going to talk in terms of, beef and that type of thing, Grass-fed, pasture-raised, the same with turkey and chicken and poultry. You don't want the commercial ones that are, again, if you ever watch some of those documentaries on the food industry, they're really quite scary. You would probably never eat commercial chicken again because they're so pumped full of these antibiotics and hormones. So again, pasture-raised meats, poultry, pasture-raised free-range eggs. Again, you don't want anything that's been affected with hormones. Wild, sustainably caught fish. The last thing we want to do is eat a bunch of fish. As much as fish is good for us, if it's full of mercury, again, we're taking all of that in. So it is the healthiest raised, fed way possible and wild, non-farmed fish in terms of protein. If someone is plant-based, there's whatever basically their healthy plant protein. I'm not a vegetarian expert, but whatever their healthy plant-based protein is of their choice. I always say limit soy, don't go overboard in soy. Mm-hmm. But there are so many other ways that they can get healthy sources of protein in a plant-based diet. I, as of yet, don't have women that I work with that are plant-based. But again, it's making smart choices. And every grocery store has products that are labeled that they are grass-fed and pasture-raised. They're a little bit harder to find. They're unfortunately a little bit more expensive. And I'm hoping as this becomes more of a common thing and we're starting to become more aware of our food system, I'm starting to see it here where I live, just outside of Toronto. It's more readily available and the price differential is not as much. So hopefully that trend will continue.
Yeah. I mean, do you see a difference? I don't know how often you get to the US, but do you see a difference in what is available here versus Canada?
It depends where you are. I love going to the States. I love, going into your Costco's and your grocery stores because everything is different. I mean, it's the same, but it's different. You come to Toronto, you think that you're in Chicago. It really depends on where you live. There's a struggle. If you're living in a smaller city that maybe has a smaller grocery stores, perhaps might be a little bit more challenging. But if you're living in a larger city, you're definitely going to find it. And if you're living somewhere, rural and you have access to local farms, Toronto's an interesting spot because we have so much farmland around here that goes around the city. We actually have our meat products delivered from a local farm. So those deliveries are, that is direct, it's available. And I actually find it's quite reasonable because you're cutting out the middleman. You're buying direct from the farm. And that is really taking off here. I remember about 3 years ago, we were really limited on companies that did it. And now I can pull up my computer and I'll find a dozen in one quick search. So that is always a great option. And I recommend that a lot for clients and they love it.
And I noticed that farmers markets are getting a little bit more diverse in what they're offering as far as the eggs and the meat and other things, not just the fruits and vegetables. That being said, I live in the Los Angeles area where you can pretty much get anything because of just the nature of how people eat here versus some of the other places in the country.
Yeah, I've been to LA and I've been to the farmers market there. And again, as I'm saying, as this is becoming more and more popular and they're seeing more of a need for it, it is becoming more commonplace to find these products in a grocery store. And I think a lot of the times people just think that they're not available because they haven't looked. They just, always go to their average, their go-to food. And a lot of people, I know it becomes challenging because groceries become more expensive. But I, feed these things to my son because I don't want my son raised on a hormone antibiotic diet. It's getting very scary when you hear about resistant bacteria and that type of thing. It's important to raise our children this way as well so they don't have this constant exposure to foods. And I want to say one thing really quickly. One of the important things that I have my clients change is the way they store food and the way they drink their water. Even though a piece of plastic says it's BPA free, it's not 100%. So if you're constantly storing leftovers, taking your lunch to work in these plastic containers, these chemicals get into our system as well, and they work like xenestrogens, and they mimic hormones in the body. So it's not just what you're eating; it's also, staying away from chemical-free body products and staying away from storing your foods in chemical-filled plastics as well. It's really a full lifestyle, and people can make really big differences just by making small changes in what they do in their daily lives.
See, I love that you say that because there are probably some people listening who are like, oh my gosh, I have to revamp my whole life. And then it's just so overwhelming. And so even if we started with, what do you use? Do you use glass when you put leftovers in there in the fridge?
Yes, we use all glass. We went to Costco. They had a whole bunch of sets and I bought a bunch of sets and I threw out all the plastic and put them in the drawer that we used to hold the Tupperware. And that's what we use now. And it's worth it, because once you start doing the reading, seeing what some of these products do, it's worth it to take that step for our health purposes. I don't think that we can put a price on our health. It really is an investment that you can't afford not to make.
Isn't it funny? We're not as willing to necessarily put the investment into our food or maybe a gym or whatever it is, but yet the co-pays, the health, at least here in the US, health insurance and the whole industry is a mess. And so, I mean, I know for me, I have a child with an autoimmune disease and I have thousands of dollars of bills every year. And, to go back and to say, oh, well, I'm not willing to invest in living well, but yet I'm willing to invest or pay for illness. And so I think it's really going back to our mindset, flipping that you're going to have to pay for your health one way or another.
Exactly. It's changing your perspective on the way you look at it. You can't afford not to invest in your health, because it will cost you far more in various ways, both financially and in quality of life as we get older. And, I am so glad that I started doing this when I did, because I honestly feel better now than I did when I was 30. I really, really do. I mean that with absolute sincerity.
Wow. So you mentioned some of your clients or people that you come across and you say, oh, that's hormonal. That's hormonal. What are the symptoms that they're suffering from? What are the changes they can make to fix it?
Well, the biggest one that every single one of them comes to me with, I have this 15 pounds. I just can't lose it. My old way is not working anymore. And I think that's what most women find. I used to follow this eating plan when I was in my 30s or I was in my late 20s, and I would just run and the weight would fall off. And they're like, it doesn't matter what I do, I can't lose the weight. So it's not being able to lose weight. It's gaining weight. It's where they gain the weight. It's more a big telltale sign of a hormonal imbalance, particularly increased cortisol levels, is the inability to lose weight in the stomach, or suddenly holding a lot of weight in your stomach. Bloating, fatigue, irritability, poor sleep habits. There's, thinning hair, dry skin. All of those things show that there's an imbalance in the body. And a lot of it's just complete lack of energy. Like, I just don't feel good. I feel, stressed. So one of the biggest things I tell women is try, if you can, to manage your stress. So is it really important to stay up that extra hour to binge on whatever it is you're watching on Netflix? Is that really necessary when you can really take that extra hour of sleep? Because the one thing, and we're all notorious for it, it feels like there's not enough hours in the day,
right? Is
quality sleep. If you do not get enough sleep, and I'm saying 7 hours, I know a lot of us are like, oh no, I'm fine, I function on 5 or 6. You think you are, but your body's not. So try to improve the quality of your sleep. And I say, if that means that you think that you need to get up at 5 to get your workout in and you're only getting 6 hours of sleep, skip the workout and fit it in later when you can, because it's not worth losing that sleep. And the other one right away is stop over exercising. Not only will I tell someone to send me an average day of what you're eating, and I can tell just by eyeballing at what they're doing wrong, but tell me your exercise schedule. And there's two extremes. Either they're not exercising at all, and we need to move our bodies. We need to have the resistance training, but not exercise too much. And I think I'm the complete opposite what anyone thinks when they compete. And the reason why I compete, again, is to show women what is possible. I don't do it for the $3 trophy. Too much exercise creates so much stress on the body. When I was a runner, I was constantly injured and my body was more stressed. So when I do, everyone says they're cutting for a competition or to stay lean, I recommend 2 types of cardio and no more than this. Either 35 to 40 minutes in the morning, if you can, of low intensity, steady state cardio, or what is known as LISS. In layman's terms, go for a brisk walk. Don't kill yourself on the elliptical. Don't kill yourself on the treadmill. Or the other one is 20 minutes of HIIT, high intensity interval training. And all that means is do jumping jacks for 30 seconds on, 30 seconds off. Pick an activity you like and do 30 seconds at a higher intensity and 30 seconds at a rest. That's all they need to do. And one of the greatest things about HIIT training, it has more fat burning benefits than killing yourself for an hour on the treadmill. It helps the body create short bursts of the human growth hormone, which is something that we stop producing or produce at lower levels as we age. And it is something that is absolutely necessary for muscle growth and maintenance. And if you do it fasted, basically the benefits of HIIT training are amplified because you get all the benefits. You're burning fat instead of carbohydrates to work out. But while the body is in the fasted state, it helps with short bursts of the release of the human growth hormone. So it is so beneficial without having to do these ridiculous hours worth of cardio, and just do enough resistance training. So don't train for a half marathon and then go to CrossFit at night. We have to get rid of that mentality that more is more. It actually less is more. And that's all that I do to stay lean. I do 20 minutes of HIIT in the morning, or I go for a walk. I did that this morning. I put on my headphones, listened to podcast, and went for a walk.
What you're really teaching at herpowerlifestyle.com is really just embracing movement and nutrition in your life and not jumping on some crazy diet and killing yourself, which I love. I'm such a fan of that because I think at this point we've all done the all or nothing. I mean, I've always labeled myself as, I'm so all or nothing. And at 48 years old, I'm tired of all or nothing. I want to just do things that make me feel good.
I used to be that all or nothing person as well. And it's taxing and it's stressful. I have a client who she just started working with me and she sent me an email and she was freaking out. She's like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I have to go away for the next 2 weekends and I have no control over the food. And then I'm hosting people and I can't feed them salmon every night. And I basically just reiterated the basic principles to her. I said, you don't have to be perfect. We're working on progress, not perfection. I don't want you doing anything restrictive. And basically I gave her, just follow these guidelines, try to keep these in the back of your head, and you will still see results. It's small tweaks. It doesn't have to be 100% on the eating plan. I just give a meal plan to guide people because I do it macro based with that breakdown I talked about earlier.
Right.
To guide people who are new at it. But it's people have made everything so overcomplicated and everything has to be, times 20, more exercise and more this and more that. And the one thing that I find with this type of lifestyle with women, it's not as stressful. One of the first things I ask, can I have wine? Sure you can. And I tell them how to work that in. Of course. What I'm telling people to take the stress out of their lives, if a glass of wine helps you get the stress out of your life, knock yourself out. So we also practice something called carb cycling. So there is a day of the week where or 2 days a week, I do tell them to up their carb intake to, restore the glycogen stores back in their muscles. But if you have a wedding, a baby shower, a graduation, you're going out for dinner with your husband and your kids, you can go ahead and have carbs in your meal. You want a baked potato with your barbecue dinner, go ahead. And it's that sort of release for them knowing that, oh my goodness, I can actually live like this and I don't have to be restrictive. And the best part, they're not waking up Monday morning full of guilt and then punishing themselves with over-exercise to undo what they did in eating. It's a balanced, less is more approach, just with some basic principles that they need to remember because we're eating to heal the body. And there's things that we should avoid and there's things that we need to do.
One of the things that is a theme in this podcast is living with intention. And I think what you're teaching people is to just look at your body and your life with intention. And it doesn't mean that you have to starve yourself or restrict this, that, and the other thing and feel miserable. It just means fuel yourself and then splurge on occasion.
Yes.
It's a totally different mindset.
We've all been conditioned our entire lives. We work towards reward. I'm not trying to have them chase the carrot, but it's more of the taking away the stress on them that they think that they have to live this restrictive lifestyle because life is stressful enough and they can still get the results. I don't believe in these lifestyles. I don't want someone thinking 24 hours a day about how they're eating or stressing out over the food. It really is the mindset. I first of all need them. I love the thought of they need to lose the weight kind of up top before they can lose it down below. They got to fix the mindset and, get rid of all the self-limiting beliefs. If you've been heavy all your life, so what? Now you're just going to do something to improve if you want to lose weight. And women will come for different reasons. Some they want to gain more muscle, but it's, believing that they can, believing that, whatever they've thought of themselves or been told in the past, this is just this new lifestyle going forward. I'm going to feel great. I can still enjoy my life, but I'm going to be doing things that are going to heal my body and make me feel better.
I love that. So let's talk about aging in reverse. I have a strong feeling that you're not talking about like Botox and fillers here. What does aging in reverse look like to you?
I feel better now than I did when I was in my 30s. And it's because I've become more mindful about how I'm feeding my body. I'm not looking at the quick fix. And the amazing thing that happens, and it's interesting, I was looking at my wedding pictures the other week, and I've been married 14 years this year, and I really haven't aged that much in terms of my skin. I find I'm less injured now, but because I'm constantly feeding my body all the things that it craves or that it needs for cell renewal, for muscle growth. So again, the healthy fats, whole foods, leafy greens, lots of nutrients with the fiber, keeping the liver fleshed out. If your body is functioning at an optimal state, you're going to feel better. We constantly live in this assumption that it's the new norm is living in a state of feeling crappiness. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm just stressed. It must be my job. It's not necessarily. It's the way that we're treating our bodies. You could have a really stressful job and feel great if you're treating your body correctly. So when I started really focusing on micronutrients as well as the macronutrients in terms of the healthy fats and studying foods and which foods do what and, which are good for hair, skin, and nails, which are great for skin, what helps, with, something like bone broth, and you're getting collagen and the gelatin and that type of thing that not only help our hair, skin, and nails, but, our joints, getting enough protein. I feel better. I have more energy. I really do. I feel much stronger at this age. I now am, helping coach my son's soccer team. I wouldn't have dreamed of doing that. I'm really 30 something. Oh, I don't have time to do that. Or I'm too tired. I just want to sit in the sideline and watch.
Right.
And again, I've honestly seen like my skin, like I personally like don't feel that I look my age. I get that a lot, but I think it's because of the way I treat my body. It's the energy. A lot of it too is mindset. We kind of take this assumption that, well, I'm getting older, so I guess this is normal. It's not. We have a lot of control over the way we choose to age and the way we age. And if you treat yourself right and you keep your body moving, your body's going to treat you right, or treat you well, I should say.
I know for me, even just talking to people about weight training or other exercises, it's not about weight loss and having like this killer body. I loved when somebody explained it to me at the gym one time, when you're moving into your 60s and 70s and 80s and we don't have our balance, that this weight training and having a strong core and strong muscle tone and all of these things can help us just live a better life and be able to move longer. And I think some of that stuff, if you told me that in my 20s and 30s, I'd be like, yeah, whatever. I mean, just like a lot of advice, right? From people when we're in our 20s
we think we know it all.
But I think as we are over 40, we start to go, oh, that's not that far off. That's coming up quick. So I better do things today that will allow me to have a positive, fulfilling quality of life for the rest of my life. And so if there's somebody listening today who feels like, okay, I'm overwhelmed and I'm not taking any of these steps, I think, Alicia, that you are extremely inspiring for us to just make some small changes and to look at life different, because it's not this quick fix. I know for me, I am now moving my body regularly throughout the week, and that if I don't hit my fourth day at the gym, I'm like, oh, I don't feel good.
You get used to it, and you do feel crappy if you're used to it, and all of a sudden you don't do it.
Right. Like I sometimes will just be, out of the shower and then I'll put one hand on my other bicep and I'm like, oh, I can feel muscles. Or today I was stretching after the workout at the gym. Feel the back of my legs like it's muscle. It's just nothing I could put in my body as far as wine or sugar or anything like that. None of it touches the self-fulfilling feeling that I get when I feel strong.
I agree 100%.
I'm still a work in progress. I'm not out there doing bodybuilding competitions, at least not yet. But I know that today I showed up better than I did 6 months ago. And that for me is enough.
That is a win right there. If you see the progress and, you are feeling the results of it, and you also know that it doesn't have to be difficult. It's just a little bit of movement every day. that and the way you feel when you see the results of doing that, that is the biggest reward.
Totally. And I'm all about now setting goals. Our gym they have fitness testing, kind of like the martial arts belt system. You can go for different levels, different colors of a band. And so I went the other day into their book and I found all the under 50 categories and the different belts. And I was like, okay, level 7, that's my goal. And then I wrote down all the results I have to get in each of these tests. So whether it's running or a broad jump or whatever else that they're testing, I know what I have to hit. And so for the next 3 weeks, I'm working on those goals. That is so different than jumping on an elliptical because I feel like I'm fat.
Exactly. A goal setting is so valuable and so important. Having something attainable that you want to reach, knowing that there is, I don't say it's a finish line, it's the next level.
Exactly.
And constantly having that, because there is no finish line. It's not, it's not a race, it's a marathon. There is no finish line, but it's set these levels because it will help give you focus. Having a plan when you go into the gym will help give you focus. Having a meal plan in the week and knowing what you're going to eat will help give you focus and keep you on track. I think goals are so valuable, and they help keep people accountable, keep them on track. And then there's, like you said, these bands, there is that feeling of accomplishment when you hit it and you're like, okay, let's bring on the next one. Next time I'm going to do this one. It is so empowering, particularly for women as we're aging.
Absolutely. I know for me, that's everything. Accountability and community. That's like the 40 Thrive way right there, because if we don't hold each other accountable and find somebody to be a buddy, whether you're hiring a coach, whether you're reaching out to you and working with you, whether it's just finding your neighbor to go for walks, accountability is everything. And I think that feeling like you're inspired and excited to do something and to actually get that human connection while doing it, there's nothing better.
Exactly. We're moms. It's also a great example to set for kids. For kids as they're growing, that whole goal setting and they see mom doing it and mom being strong, I think that is a really, really valuable lesson for our kids to see with us as role models.
Absolutely. I hear that a lot where, whether it's when I'm teaching podcasting or just doing something positive and someone's like, well, I don't know how I can do that with kids. And I'm like, that's the reason you actually have to do it. They learn by example. You can't be sitting in your chair drinking a glass of wine and telling them that they need to move their body.
Exactly. If we have to walk the walk also.
100%. So before we go, I have to ask you, what does it mean to you to 40 Thrive?
Oh, okay. It's being in a place that I am great where I am. I'm strong, I'm capable, and I'm going to keep going. I've got this. It's being in a place of confidence and also understanding that the things that you do for you, you deserve it. Being the best possible version of yourself has nothing to do with age. It's being in a spot where you're comfortable, you're working on you, and you're strong going forward. It's a whole mindset. I'm loving being in my 40s. I think this is probably my most comfortable decade.
Yeah. That's awesome. And I think there are a lot of women who either are right along with you or they want to be. And so I really appreciate your expertise and you're willing to share. I think it's going to be really helpful for my listeners. Alicia, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
You can get more from Alicia at herpowerlifestyle.com or follow her on social media at herpowerlifestyle. Thank you so much for listening. This is a great episode to share with a friend. You know the one. She needs to hear this. And don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcast app, and you will never have to go searching for another 40 Thrive podcast episode again. Until next time, take care and keep thriving. Spring has sprung, and with the change of seasons, sometimes comes an increase in vitality. If you're feeling in the mood for a little more personal time, may I suggest Coconut. Coconut is all about providing clean and natural ingredients when you're enjoying your most intimate moments, with or without a partner. Naturally safe products developed by people who are obsessed with quality. Get 15% off with promo code GROWNASS at grownasswoman.guide/Coconut. That's 15% off with promo code GROWNASS at grownasswoman.guide/Coconut.